it was super surreal. I remember 1990 was a really cold winter, and I lived in Rusholme and my primary school. And I remember, like, I was thinking, oh, it's not that bad. I came, and I think because football has always been part of my life, because I was obsessed with it, like every other African kid. You know, growing up in the continent, you get obsessed with it. And it's mainly one of the things that actually, for my hyperactiveness, it was a thing that I could run all day, play all day. Like I said, I just wanted to be, I just needed to be stimulated, like, and I would get stimulated by those things. And then coming here was tough, obviously being estranged from my mother. I never saw her actually until, I never saw her again. Yeah, my mother passed away, and it's probably one of the most painful things in my life.
Gosh.
So I try to keep it together.
Yeah. Take your time, bro. Did you manage to keep speaking with her and sort of keep in touch in various ways?
Yeah, but it was never the same. But coming here without her was painful, because, you know, it's like your mother. It's like, yes, it's super important when you're that age. So it was tough. But football, as soon as I saw people in the park, and then when I think it was 1990, so it was that summer. I came July the 8th when I came here, and it was that the World Cup was going on, and you know, my granddad and the family that were here, so we were talking about football, and they were like, oh, and I was like, I'm cheering for all the African teams, and I remember in Cameroon playing England, and you know, England cheating Cameroon and those things, because I thought, oh, and then people are like, oh, it's going to get colder in a couple of months' time. It's going to get colder. And I'm like, I'm dreading this. I'm like, it's going to get colder. And then I remember, you know, months before, you know, like near August, taking me out, getting me this heavy coat, this heavy, like proper industrial heavy coat. And then, you know, the weather changing and being cold outside, playing outside, riding bikes outside. And all of that was changing, even like the trees, and seeing all these things, how the trees were changing color, and just going, oh my word, what's going on? And I remember thinking, I'm getting homesick. I want to go. I don't care if it's a war zone. I want to go. I remember one time I got into an argument with my uncle, and I started walking. I'm like, I'm going. Where am I going? I'm going to the airport, and I want to go back to East Africa. You know, I want to go back to Hargeisa. That was my thing. But yeah, it was tough. But football made me connected. Like, I've got friends now that I've known since I was 9 years old. Since I was 9 years old. And I'm still tight with them, because I'm a believer that we saved each other, and through football, and the importance of sport, because it's a universal language. As one of the things that I love, I think music is a universal language. I think football is a universal language. I think having a spliff in different parts of the world is a universal language. I've traveled a bit, I've been to different places, and people, you see the same thing in different cultures, where people outside a party, somebody's having a spliff and they want to pass it to you. I don't smoke anyway. A lot of people will come to that about stereotyping. We'll come to that in a minute, but that the things to say, you don't drink? No. You don't smoke? No. It's like, it's the things that people just think, because they just want to stereotype you in a certain way. But I'm saying to you, I think the ganja culture is universal. Football culture is universal. Music is universal. You know, these things are universal, but football, yeah, I would say that. And honestly, I'm not being dramatic. I don't want to come off as being super dramatic. I got emotional there a minute. I just want to let people know it's okay to get emotional. And that's one of the things about men, especially black men, that we're not told. We can't get emotional, you know, and it's okay to get emotional. It's okay to cry. To me, when I cry, it's because something has touched me and I need to let it out other than keep it in. But yeah, being dyslexic was really tough. A lot of, still now, I have issues around my mental health, insecurity in terms of, in a very construct way of where academics is, like you said, like you laid it out, read this, I can't concentrate because my brain, something in my brain doesn't, my dyslexia is that I can have a constructed paragraph, but when I write it down, nobody can understand it, nobody can read it, it doesn't make sense. When I text or when I tweet, you know, I don't know if you see my Twitter thing. I put that out there. I'm dyslexic, spelling and grammar purist. Catch me outside. I put that on my on my Twitter, you know what I mean? But because of these things, so it's been really difficult. I think school was difficult. Like the dyslexia, they never caught it because it said English not your mother language. But even though I would ask the most interesting questions in a classroom, you know what I mean? Anytime it came to verbal, and I'm from a people of nomadic people. So a couple of 100 years ago, oral languages, you know what I mean? People moving around different parts of Africa, like it's mainly oral and storytelling and imaginative. So another thing, coming back to what you were saying about being confined, like school, this, like all of these different things. So that's why I honestly, the biggest thing when people say to me, how come you haven't have any kids? It's because I didn't want them to be in this confined place, because exactly like you said, brother, everything in Africa was an adventure. Going and like going and swimming in lakes. You know what I mean? Like when I tell people that like watermelons are like growing, big watermelons. When I came out of school, we should just grab them, smash them on the floor, and there we go. Like in that heat, walking up. All of these different things were an adventure. You know what I mean? Every little thing in Africa. The thing about Africa is that for kids is that the land and everything around it becomes something. If it's not football, it's something else. It's going, can we go there? And can we go climb this tree? Can we go and climb this bit of rock? Can we jump off that? You know what I mean? Can we go and get some tires and do somersaults on them? You know what I mean? Like using the tire. When I try to explain to my friends, they're like, so you use the tire? Yeah. So a tire that hasn't got the inner tube in, the big tire, we would put it in a place where it was a bit more sandy, and when we'd all run up, spring off that tire to go and do somersault, to try to outdo each other. That's what we did. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Everything, the thing about Africa is like the resourcefulness of people and children is exactly the same. It's like just everything around you, making use of everything that's around you. So coming here, yeah, struggling with dyslexia, it's one of the things, actually, talking about mental health. The only ever time one of the times when my mental health was really dark was when doing my degree, because I just feel like I couldn't do it. And I felt like a failure coming from an African context. The pressure that is on when you're an African kid, the education is wired into us. And yeah, we're talking open and honest and frank here. Yeah, there was a time I thought of jumping off a building. I did the part, I got up there and I was like, I can't do this. I'm a failure. I'm a failure to all my family, to my heritage. I'm a failure to all of the people. And the biggest thing why I didn't do it, why I didn't jump, because everybody that ever helped me in my life in the city of Manchester, in South Central Manchester, we're talking about Hume, Russia, Moss Side. This is the areas where I grew up. Every one of those people flashed before my eyes. Every one of them came to me, and the look of disappointment, because people like went out of their way. And that's the beauty about things. Like when I'm away in difficult times in my life to really help me, to look out for me, And so, yeah, it's a thing that I still struggle with, like dyslexia is a thing. I sometimes think, if I didn't have legs, when my mental health is really bad, I could think about if my legs, having dyslexia or having no legs, I'd be like having no legs. And that's how deep and dark it gets. And yeah, and that comes into race as well, because all the stereotypes that we're stupid, that we're thick, that, we're this, all of that perpetuation that's out there in a white supremacist education and white supremacist world that we live in, is out there to perpetuate these negative things about us. You know what I mean? Like I said, and that's why I'll jump on any platform to come and think, ain't nobody speaking for me. We're speaking for us, man.
Amazing. I mean, firstly, thank you very much for, being courageous and expressing your vulnerability. And, again, like something we always say and promote on all our podcasts and every time we're together, even as Black men, to basically amplify that it's okay to not be okay and to be vulnerable. And, you've still got that connection, with your mother, bless her soul, for bringing you into this world. And still being connected even though you're miles apart, and having that connection. And she could see that, she's looking down on you and saying that she's proud.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
definitely,
Like,
definitely.
yeah,
And,
thank you. Yeah.
and
Yeah, it's one of those big things, man. It's like, yeah, we're forever like, we always have to have our humanity. So you're talking about being vulnerable. That's the most human thing to be. You're talking about being emotional. That's the most human thing to be. But we've let aspect of culture, tell us that being vulnerable is weak.
yeah, and now it's a stigma that's embedded
Yeah.
in. So one thing I was actually going to ask you is that, like, even though, so firstly, how many siblings do you have?
I have about 11, sorry, 11.
Amazing, amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. So with that, because again, back home, and this is something that you'll resonate with, and something we've spoken about previously on previous podcasts, is that back home there's stigma when it comes to mental health. And this is also seen, not just back home, but it's also seen, something you're very proud of in football as well, or it was seen a long time ago, the stigma of, men can't talk about their emotions, they can't talk about their feelings and things like that, because you're seen to be weak and you're not a man and things like that. So with you transitioning and coming to the Western side of the world, um, what was the actual stigmas between, from back home, you coming, to the UK, growing up, understanding it and breaking that stigma for yourself and people around you?
Yeah, it's fascinating because I don't. I mean, I can only talk about my pew, but I was there since I was 9. So in terms of, I don't know what it was. I just think that with families and relatives back home, because of the amount of people, like there was always another wedding to go to. There was always everybody to see everybody, all aunties. And I know people had their own struggles, but people lived in bigger houses, you know what I mean? Like, or in the same neighborhood, like, you know what I mean? Like, so all of the having access to each other, the people being all together, I think felt that people were going through stuff together. You know what I mean? It kind of had that there was a share of burdens. But in the West, it's the individualized stuff. You know what I mean? It's more separated. You get to this, you get to this age, you get to that. So, I mean, I can 100% imagine, like, people were struggling with mental health in Africa. I remember one of my uncles. Yeah, I remember he wasn't well. And I remember one time we went to see him. And I remember going in this yard, and people, obviously, it's a fact, everybody knows about it, that he was shackled to something. And he had a shackle thing to his leg. You know what I mean? That he was, so he can come and walk with us in the garden and talk to us and that. But he had to go back. But I remember seeing his ankle, like, the mark of like something being tied to. And I remember thinking that's weird, because as a kid, I was just very observant. I remember thinking that was weird. And understanding that that's how mental health is treated. Other than that, you've got the wise woman you go and see, you know what I mean? Or the wise uncle who knows, who can get the herb or something, you know what I mean? Even Somalia is mainly like Muslim country. The old ways before Islam still there, the different ways of people going to see somebody if they're struggling with something. And then realizing, but one of the things that I think that I saw as a kid, especially living in a country where, as a kid, I loved it, but politically it wasn't uneven, because we had a dictatorship that was suppressing from people from the north. He came from the south, and seeing the turmoil and like the curfews and protests and all these different kind of things. I think maybe I might be wrong, but maybe in different African settings it's different. Like, and there's another thing as well about Africa. We're not all the same. We're not all the same. We don't all have the same. We all bring individual, cultures and identities together. But I think I saw older brothers. I saw uncles. I saw people who were vulnerable, and men who were vulnerable, who would cry at funerals, who would cry when things happen, somebody's in hospital. So to me, crying was I never saw it. I only really saw it when I came to you. Like, boys don't cry. Like, that's when I saw it here. I didn't see it as much, like when I was growing up in East Africa, you know, when people were upset, you know, people lost their temper, but, you know, but I did see some uncles and that of mine and older brothers who were vulnerable. Like, so I never put that thing together. And I'm one of those people that things are a lot of it is done on instincts. And it's that African way of knowing, I think. I always say that to people, and people are like, well, what does that mean?